Hi everyone, a very good evening. You've tuned into ET Now's Rise with India Primetime segment. I'm Mubina Kapasi and this is the Money Show, your one-stop destination for all your money-related matters. Okay, well, today the topic that we decided to talk about is what should you do if in case you do want to start withdrawing money from your investments, because at the end of the day that's what you're investing for, right? To be able to withdraw the money and enjoy a better life, be it in retirement or to be able to spend it on the very reason why you were saving and investing money. So how could you do that? What's an SWP option? What's the dividend option? Which one's better? Which one's more tax efficient? All of that is what we'll be discussing today on the show with Mr. Anil Rego, and we'll also be getting in a quick preview on the Bharat Bond ETF. So if you have any questions or queries, do call in on 24990300. You can email us on themoneyshow@etnow.tv. It's going to be a bit of a truncated show because we're going to be watching out for the cabinet meet. So stay tuned to ET Now for that as well. But back to the topic at hand, and that is withdrawing money at the time of need from your investments. Which is the best option? How should you plan for that in a way that it will help you, ease the process, in the future when your financial objective has been achieved, or when, it is time for you to retire and for your investments to now start bearing fruit, for them to support your financial dreams, your retired life. And to do all of that, I have with me today on the show Anil Rego, founder and CEO of Right Horizons. Mr. Rego, thank you so much for joining us on the Money Show. All of us invest so that eventually we can enjoy the fruits of our investment, right? So how should essentially investors ensure that their portfolio is ready for them to be able to ease the process of actually withdrawing the money when they need it, whether it's during retirement, whether it's perhaps to buy that house that they've always wanted, for which they were saving up, so on and so forth?
There's a lot of difference between withdrawing for, let's say, retirement and withdrawing for a need like purchasing of your house. And a primary function there is that, when you're withdrawing for retirement, you're possibly doing it in very small lots, in small percentages, because you're probably trying to keep your capital intact, and maybe you'll be taking out, say, about 1% or less a month, right? So whereas in the case of purchasing a house, you will want to do a lump sum withdrawal. Now, if you want to do a lump sum withdrawal, it's very important to keep liquidity in debt funds. Because sometimes, even though equity funds give you or allow you liquidity, market cycles may not be favorable at the time that you want to redeem. So at least a year or so before, ideally to put it into debt funds and then start withdrawing from there. But in the case of retirement, you can also look at options like dividend. You can look at options like systematic withdrawals, etc. And I think that is an important way of going about it. And in such cases, you can keep your principal intact and take out money either through dividend or through a systematic withdrawal basis.
So, Mr. Rego, like you mentioned, for retirement, there should be a different withdrawal mode. And for, let's say, buying a house or buying a brand new car or an expensive car, the withdrawal method will be different. So I want to focus on the retirement bit, because eventually, mutual funds are the ideal wealth creation tool to save up, for your retirement. So I want to focus on that. Many a times we're asked that, okay, should I, switch to a dividend plan once I retire, or should I do an SWP, for the mutual funds? What would you recommend they do, if you could talk about the advantages and disadvantages of both?
Yeah, definitely. See, most people think that, a dividend plan is a better thing to do, when you withdraw for your retirement. But to the contrary, actually, in most cases, a systematic withdrawal plan may be better. And it has multiple benefits. One is that it then becomes like a salary. You are used to, say, taking home 25,000 rupees or 50,000 rupees a month, and something like this will end up being like that on a monthly basis. It will hit your account, and it's not linked to what's happening with the fund there. The second aspect is, and more important actually, is the taxation standpoint. And if you look at withdrawals. Let me give you an example. If I let's say have an option to invest in a dividend mode and take the dividend out, or I use a systematic withdrawal mode. And let's say I invest say a lakh of rupees, right? For simplicity, let me assume that I get 10% return a year. So which basically means that on a lakh of rupees, I get 10,000 rupees in the year. And if it's in a dividend mode, and let's say that came as dividend, the whole 10,000 rupees would be taxable, right? So on the other hand, if I did a systematic withdrawal, that 1 lakh would have become 1.1 lakh, and I withdraw 10,000 rupees. Now, in that 10,000 rupees, they'll see, okay, how many units you've withdrawn, and that will comprise both capital as well as return. And assuming that the same 90-10 sort of rule happens, then you'll, out of this 10,000 rupees, you'll find that 9,000 rupees will be capital, and 1,000 rupees actually will be the interest out there. So on 1,000 rupees you'll end up paying tax. So assuming that in both cases 30%, and if it's in a debt fund, etc., and short term, then here you will pay 300 rupees. There you will pay 3,000 rupees. So the point is on, because you are taking out capital as well, it pushes back the taxation out there. Now the negative about looking at a systematic withdrawal, sorry, is that you may end up pulling out more than what the fund gives. So if I pulled out say 10% and the fund has given 9%, that means there'll be a capital erosion of to that extent. So that's broadly what you need to think of between a systematic withdrawal and a dividend option.
Okay, what about for debt funds? I mean, if I choose the options that you mentioned, dividend as well as SWP, would it be any different? Because from what I understand, for a debt fund, we do know for a fact that, the duration of what is classified as long-term and short-term is different, and accordingly, the capital gain tax is charged. Is it any different for a debt fund if I'm choosing dividend and SWP?
Yeah, it's more important for a debt plan because the taxations there are high. And the tax could be 30%, right, if you are in the highest bracket. So that is something which it's more important to use systematic withdrawals while you're using a debt fund. On an equity fund, there may not be much of difference because also it becomes long term after 1 year. On the debt funds, it becomes long term after 3 years. So the chance of actually it being long term is much lesser on a debt fund, and SWPs work much better while you work with debt funds.
Okay, so that's the basic difference essentially between an SWP, a dividend option, an equity mutual fund, and a debt fund. It may sound a bit complicated as such. Now, of course, to understand that, what exactly will be the amount what I'll get when compared to an SWP and a dividend. Now, SWP essentially allows you to mostly withdraw a fixed amount regularly from your mutual fund investments. So, is there any difference of sorts in the amount I'll get, Mr. Rego, for a dividend option as well as an SWP option? And what is the difference? And also, when you say withdraw a fixed amount regularly from your mutual fund, does it mean that the returns in an SWP are fixed of sorts, or how will it work? Because we do know that equity mutual funds have a lot of market vagaries involved.
Typically, when you use withdrawals for say retirement, you normally do it from a debt fund rather than equity fund. Yes, so and then you may be a little more clearer about what is the interest approximately going to be. Now, a systematic withdrawal basically is just that I'm withdrawing a certain sum of money on a particular periodicity, say it may be monthly. So if I'm withdrawing say 1% every month, then sort of I've withdrawn 12% for the year. Now, I can choose whatever I want, and I can choose 12%, I can choose even 5% a year. So, so it would completely depend on what you would like. And what an investor needs to look at is how much is the fund likely to return, right? So if I know that my debt fund is likely to return say 7%, I should be withdrawing around 7% or possibly a little lesser, maybe 6.5% on a yearly basis through a systematic withdrawal. Okay, because yes, there could be some fluctuation there if interest rate, for example, comes down. Okay, so the SWP is only an option, like, that I'm redeeming a certain amount every month, and it's completely not delinked from how much is the fund returning. So if the fund is returning more than what you're withdrawing, okay, there'll be an appreciation in the fund beyond what you've withdrawn. But on the other hand, which is an important thing to note, that if the fund is delivering a lesser return than what you're withdrawing, to that extent of excess withdrawal, your fund will see a deficit, and this can keep on increasing over a period of time. So many investors try to use systematic withdrawal on an equity fund and even an aggressive balanced fund, and find that in periods of volatility, your fund erodes significantly because already markets are down, and on top of that, you're also taking out money. So it's better done on a debt fund, or at least on what you call as a dynamic asset allocation fund. Even there, you have the more conservative version where, like, which is called an equity savings fund. So I would think between a debt fund and an equity savings fund is what you should do, because then you have broad probability of saying that, okay, this is what my return is, because you are taking out a fixed amount every month on a systematic withdrawal.
Mr. Rego, to summarize it, essentially, if right now, let's say our viewers who may be 25 or 30, and there's a great time to start investing, for in mutual funds for your retirement at the age of 60, 65, 70. So ideally, what are the options they should select now? I know it has to be a concoction of equity and debt funds. And of course, it's got to be the growth option, not the dividend option. They don't need the monthly income right now because they're getting their salaries or from their businesses. So not even an SWP is required. So ideally, what should be the perfect mix? Because like you're saying, an SWP is more relevant for debt. So what should be the perfect mix so that when it comes to retirement, he gets that steady monthly income of sorts from the debt portion?
Yeah, so let me give you sort of what you can do over a life cycle. So somebody will say 25 or 30 years, right? So you can just invest based on what is the risk appetite and the asset allocation that is right for you. And you may be significantly more in equity. But as your age increases, ideally you should be increasing your debt component. And so what will happen is, let's say when you are at a 60 years, ideally you should at least have 40% of debt on your portfolio, right? Which is, there's a thumb rule saying 100 minus your age. So if your age is 60, then 40% is what you should be holding on the debt side. Now you will then take a systematic withdrawal on this 40% of it, right? Now what you could also do is, as you come closer to retirement, you may start looking at some of the funds like what I mentioned about an equity savings fund. So which has a lower risk level. It may have a 25% or so average equity exposure at a certain point of time, but even there, it moves up and down based on market cycles. As market goes higher valuations, it moves back to debt and vice versa. So you could use a slightly more conservative fund like that, which also then makes it simple for you, and hopefully it will also beat inflation because of the equity, component out there. So ideally, as time goes by, you'll keep on increasing that portion between debt and, say, MIPs or equity savings funds. And so over a period of time, you will take out your equity returns when markets are doing well and keep moving it into some of these, especially when you come closer to retirement, so that you are able to then use your corpus without bothering about market cycles.
All right. Okay. So I think that sort of gives all our viewers an easy guide on how they should start about their investing journey for retirement.